Hello there, welcome into this video. In this video, I'm going to be going over all my settings I use for iRacing. I did do a video much like this about 3-4 years ago, so I figured I'd bring it up to date. I've just installed all the VRS gear recently. The past couple of weeks I've been running it full time, so I thought I'd get that in there as well. And let's start there now. So I'm actually running the VRS Wheelbase, wheel rim, pedals, the QR, the whole kit and caboodle. So I thought I'd start there and show you my settings. Okay, iRacing Wheelbase. I'm running the rotation at 900 degrees. That's pretty standard nowadays. Max force I've limited to 75. I'm not running any damping. This, if you find the oscillations a little bit too much, then run some damping. But I just find with the 60 Hertz from iRacing, I like to have all the fidelity I can get. I run no friction. I run no inertia. No spring. Filters I run, responsive 1, with no static force reduction. If you find the wheel a little heavy mid-corner and you're looking to reduce that only when the highs are kicking in, then increasing the static force can really help. No non-linearity. I'm running the slew rate on performance. This really helps if it's all the way down at 60 Hertz. And for the end stop, I'm running that at 100% force with max stiffness. Basically, when I rotate the wheel all the way to its maximum, I like just a firm feel at either end. And I think that's everything. I don't run a soft end stop. So the most important things for me, I find in iRacing, is the responsive 1, smoothing, and performance slew rate. Static force reduction, as I say, if you find it too heavy, sort of mid-corner, but you'd like to keep the amount of force, then that's really helpful. I used to run that kind of thing back in the day. And damping can really help reduce the oscillations. But again, iRacing's only 60 Hertz, so I like to have max fidelity. Okay, let's hop into iRacing and I'll show you the settings that are paired with this. Okay, here in iRacing, I'm going to go over to Options, Drive, and obviously on the subject of force feedback in the wheelbase, obviously enable force feedback, linear mode, reduce when force when parked, just in case. So I'm 41 Newton meters. Now, this does depend on the car, but I'd say I swing between 41 and 50, depending on the car I'm in. But I usually just change it in the black box, and I don't save per car. I just do it on feel, really. Wheel force 20 Newton meters. That's obviously the VRS wheelbase's limit. The intensity 50%. I don't use this. I have auto off and the intensity doesn't matter. But if you're wondering what this means, when you use the iRacing force feedback detector in the black box to detect the max force, intensity's almost telling it on what spectrum you like it. So with max intensity, with auto, it'll give you the strongest, 0 the lightest, and 50 obviously somewhere between. Make sure smoothing, damping, and min force are set to 0 if you're using the VRS wheelbase. But to be honest, this is true with any direct drive. In most direct drives, you're going to want to set your wheel force here. So if you've got the SimiCube 2 Pro, you want that at 25, the Leo Bodner 27, the VRS 20, any of the Fanatec ones, get that to match the wheel. Your max force, that's controlling the amount. The lower, the stronger, the higher, the less. And linear mode, you'd only untick this if you wasn't using a direct drive. Otherwise, make sure it's ticked. I think that is everything on the wheelbase. Let's head back to VRS and look at the pedals. Okay, on the pedal front, I do have one for GT3s and LMDH. I just find the braking style so different that I actually ended up creating a different profile. Each to their own, though. My GT3 pedal calibration. So let me explain. First of all, when I calibrated the brake, I calibrated it to 100%, i.e. I pressed down with absolute full force to get the most out of the pedal on calibration. That just allows me to then be able to adjust this max force to each of my settings. But on the hardware side, I have my brake set with the red spring. I like it stiff like that. And then I run it at 50% for GT3s. I think for LMDHs, I run it about 41. Yeah. So about a 9% difference in braking. But this suits my need. This is the brake, very stiff. Nice amount of throw. 4 on the low. That just suits my trail braking and where I lean. It gives me a good feel on the low end. 50 on the high end. Clutch I don't actually use or have fitted right now. The throttle, 95 on the top, which feels perfect for me at the top end. And 2 on the bottom end. You can run this as low as, say, I wouldn't go any higher than 5, but you just want it to kick in when you feel like it should be on the throttle curve. So that just feels right for me. And the throttle pedal I run on the maximum preload. LMDH, as I say, the only difference is I drop it down about 9% because we brake quite a lot to 100%, whereas in GT3, that isn't ideal. On the iRacing side, just make sure you got the load cell pedal ticked. It is the same as having the slider set to 0, but just make sure you got that ticked. The steering wheel, there's not a lot to show you. I have the same layout of buttons that I've pretty much had for all wheels, but that's dependent on each. I have the top left set to flash, the top right set to pit limiter. I have one of my rotaries to brake bias, the other for traction control. I use the joysticks for controlling the black box, whether it's cycling through, up, down, left and right and clicking in. And then the rest of the buttons aid what I need at the time. But yeah, each to their own on the steering wheel. So there's not a lot to show you there. So let me show you my app INI. There's a few settings in there I've changed out of from stock. And it's in the pit service area. So how I run things now is everything turned off. So I turn off the iRacing auto fuel. We'll get to that in a moment, but I use 2 different fuel calculators on the overlay side. Auto reset fast repair and auto reset pit box I have off and off and off. Basically, nothing gets ticked for me regarding fuel, tires, fast repair, whether it's the start of the race, whether I've just pitted, no matter what, nothing gets set unless I set it. That's just the way I run things now. Okay, next thing to show you is iRacing Manager. I have been using this product for 3.5 years now, and it's been a part of my system ever since. It's changed a lot here and there. I used to have almost 7 or 8 apps in here. Nowadays, I don't use the Crew Chief app anymore. I find the iRacing one's improved to a point where I don't need it, but that was a big change for me. JRT, let's cover that first. So I have this set to start and stop with iRacing and start hidden. It's just the command line. But if we head on over, I'll show you how I use it. All I use it for is the fuel calc. If we head over to my refuel options, I have the refuel mode set to manual. That means I have to press a button to set once I agree with its setting. I have that set to a shortcut that I then map on a button. Next setting to head over to is the calculator options. I have it set to 5 laps, i.e. the fuel recommendation it gives me is based on my last 5 laps of fuel consumption. And that's pretty much it. How I show this is through caps. We'll get to that now. Okay, let me open caps. And window, this is my version, not what you see on stream. If I scroll all the way down, you can see here I have a JRT fuel. I have created a custom overlay with the URL that JRT uses, hide when not in iRacing, and this gives you my JRT fuel calc shown in the sim. I'll jump into iRacing and I can show you. Okay, now we're in iRacing. I'm going to open up caps so I can move one of the overlays to show you. And I'm going to move the JRT one. So this is what I have. I actually have it in the top left of my right monitor. Shows me the tank, consumption, estimated laps, time remaining in the race, laps remaining in the race, and how much fuel to add. And as I say, this updates in real time. I also use the caps fuel calc. We'll get to that in a moment when I show you my cap settings. But this is the one I primarily use the most. The only reason I have the both is caps gives me more of a conservative estimate based on before the leader of the top class has pitted, whereas this is more real time. So sometimes they'll disagree, and then I make the judgment call on which one I'm going to trust based on the pace of the leader and how confident I'm feeling. Okay, let's take a look at my cap settings. Pretty basic, really. I start with stand-ins 2. I'm not the biggest stand-ins user while driving, but things like what lap they pit, how long they've been in the pits, sometimes the lap times, but basically strategic calls. Relative, I emulate basically the iRacing one, but want to see things like temperature, brake bias, basic information like that. Fuel calculator, here you can see in the top right. Pit lane helper, I've got this shrunk down so small, I only use it to display whether the pit limiter's on or not. So I've got it as small as possible. I don't really use the distance or timing calls. I just find some cars, it's not clear whether the pit limit's on or not. The pedals overlay, the reason I use that and not the iRacing one is simple. They look the same. There we go. There's the iRacing one. There's the caps one. I've made them similar as possible. But the caps one, when you hit the ABS, your red line will flash white, which I really like. Car left and right. I've had this on for as long as time. 99% of the time I don't use it. It will come in handy that 1% of the time where I'm late into an apex and I'm curious if someone's on me inside. It just gives me that confidence to turn in. But as I say, for the most part, don't use it. Track map. don't use at all, apart from those instances in a multi-class race if I'm looking to box early. So if I've got 5-6 laps to pit and I can fuel to the end and come in any time, I will have a glance at the track map just to see if there's a gaggle of traffic ahead to make a better strategic call. But as far as using it, I don't. It's actually off onto my right monitor. Twitch chat, obviously, JRT Fuel we covered, and this is the SimHub dash. I load my SimHub dashes through caps, much like I do JRT. It just makes it convenient for me. This one is the SamHub Jeff one for GTPs. I'll show that in a moment. I span my caps across all 3 screens. On the subject of caps, iRacing Manager, let me just show you one thing I do. In the settings of caps that auto launches it, I run argument open-racing-overlay, and then this long string, which I'll cover in a moment, and then --hidden. This long string here in between that command is this number here, the profile ID of the caps URL. Basically, all this does, it opens my caps for me, renders the overlays, and hides the actual application. So open-racing-overlay, then the profile ID, and then --hidden to hide the actual to hide this. So this disappears and the overlays show themselves. Really helpful. Okay, I'll show you this SimHub dash and my SimHub settings. But basically, SimHub, I don't use all that much anymore. Since changing to the VRS equipment, I don't have a screen on my wheel. That's all I really used it for before. It's the driving OSD in the middle, which I quite like for GTP. Okay, to my graphics settings. Let me show you options. Graphics. I'll quickly run through them, but sky, clouds, medium, cars, high, pit objects, low, because that's where you feel the FPS drops if you're ever going to feel it passing pit road. Event and grandstands, high, as long as you've got a strong enough GPU. Crowds off, objects high, that gives you access to the most braking points around the track. It's those little objects that sometimes can be helpful. Foliage or 3D grass, I have off, particles to high, full res particles, all 63 cars, and then the draw calls I have to 30 visually, 12 in the mirrors, and draw minimum pits. Again, back to that pit objects. I like to keep getting past pit road as low as possible. I don't use the dynamic log feature at all. My system's powerful enough not to worry. Frame rate rendering, I shuffle between no limit. No limit's fine. Obviously, it can warm up your PC a bit with your GPU pushing out too many frames. Just limit a few above your monitor's max hertz. Filtering, 16x, anti-aliasing 4, render dynamic shadows, object self-shadowing. Dynamic objects, this does look nice, the in-main view. For me, the trade-off's just not worth it, but if I was to move to an even more powerful computer, that is the one I'd consider going to. Night shadow maps on, walls off, 3 lights, PCF 4. Do not use cube maps. Shader quality high. I can run ultra easily, I just prefer actually the look of high. I find the windscreen reflections a bit off-putting. Hide obstructions to all. Static steering wheel, that's just what I run. You can show the steering wheel moving, hide it completely. Show the arms or show the wheel only if it has a display, which is quite a clever setting. 2-pass trees, high-quality trees. I don't show mirrors, never have. Low detail headlights and in the mirrors. My mirror field of view is 55. What I class is very linear rather than concave or convex, so has like this one-to-one relationship, which I quite like. The anti-aliasing off, that's paired with the res scaling, really. The only filter I run is HDR. I find it brilliant for night driving. This isn't real HDR, if you've been wondering. You don't need a HDR monitor. This is like an Instagram filter, for want of a better word. This is on top of the graphics rendering pipeline. Video mem swap high res 2048 car textures, and then my GPU sliders you can see there. Obviously I run triple 1080p, my triple flats and their settings. The replay settings are nigh on the same. The only thing different is I'm drawing all the calls and showing 3D grass. And the mirrors, yeah, higher detail mirrors, but that's it. I keep my replays pretty much the same unless I'm taking photographs. So, yep, all good there. Okay, on the setup front, I use ARA Setup Sync from Apex Racing Academy. Once you jump in the car, you can pick us up a connection here, and it starts downloading all the setups, and it puts them in the correct car folder, the season, the track name, and then the name of the driver who made it. So that's Maxime Briand in the LMP2, Road Atlanta, this season. All of your setups are just nicely organized. Really, really helpful. Okay, and two last things I thought I'd close out on that I always make sure done on a fresh build PC. Head over to your NVIDIA control panel and manage 3D settings. Scroll down and make sure power management mode is prefer maximum performance. By default, it is not. And go over to configure surround physics and head over to your physics settings. Make sure it's set to your GPU and not just to automatic, which is default. But yeah, I think that wraps up all my settings. Down in the comments if you've got any questions, and I'll try and get them answered. Yeah, let me know if you want to see any other videos this style. But other than that, thank you very much. If you enjoyed, mash that like button, sub if you want to see the next one, bell notification to know when the next video drops. But other than that, I'll be racing over on Twitch, and I do plan on starting to race live streaming on YouTube as well, so make sure you check that out. And yeah, thank you very much for the support, and I'll be back in the next one. Cheers.